The Liberation of Women in the Italian Renaissance by Jessica Myers. The Italian Renaissance was a time of change, not only in the arts, but also in the journey for female liberation. At the beginning of the Italian Renaissance, women were denied pretty much all political rights and were considered legally owned by their husbands. Women in every class of society were expected to perform the duties of a housewife above anything else. Lower-class women had to work in the fields with their husbands before returning home to run the household at night. The wives of middle-class merchants and shop owners helped run their husbands' businesses as well. Even though they had servants, women in the highest societal class also often helped with household tasks such as sewing, cooking, entertaining, etc. Since women who did not marry were not permitted to live on their own, they were forced to reside with either a male relative or, more frequently, in a convent. Though living this way was the norm during this time period, we can see a lot of change in the ways women started to become more involved in society in the years to come. Things were starting to change, slowly but surely. It is extremely important to acknowledge some of the most influential women in the Italian Renaissance that helped change the narrative. They embody the power women started to gain during this time period and the ways they were treated by the men who opposed their impending liberation. It is important to talk about and explore the many different ways women were able to free themselves from the hold of men in the Italian Renaissance and to never forget about the hardships they faced and the struggle it was to be a woman in this time. Women today owe a lot of our freedoms to them and their brave acts. Isabella d'Este was easily one of the strongest, most intelligent women of the Italian Renaissance period. She excelled in learning both Latin and Greek and memorized the works of multiple ancient scholars. Her singing, dancing, and instrumental talents were a delight to others as she often performed them quite publicly. She married Francesco Gonzaga, the Duke of Mantua, in 1490, and they had a loving and happy relationship. Isabella carried a large and unexpected amount of influence over the Mantua court. It could be attributed to Isabella and her presence that Mantua became known as a major center of elegance, intellect, and artistic genius. Unfortunately, a little while later, her husband was captured in battle. This brought on a whole new sense of pressure for Isabella as she now had to rule Mantua herself. While ruling, she was able to heavily influence and encourage the development of the textile and clothing industry that became the cornerstone of the Mantua economy. In her time, Isabella collected many different sculptures, manuscripts, musical instruments, and paintings, and encouraged Mantuans to do the same. Caterina Sforza, daughter of the Duke of Milan and his mistress, was born in 1463. She was raised in the court of Milan and received a classical education, unlike many girls at the time. In 1477, she married Girolamo Riario, the Pope's nephew, and was relocated to Rome. In 1488, while living in Forlì, Caterina's husband was murdered by a rival family, the Orsi. She was taken prisoner with her 6 children, but amazingly was able to escape. Once she was back in command, Caterina took on the official role of regent of Forlì and Imola, another one of their territories, for one of her sons. She continued to rule for him even when he came of age to do so himself. During her ruling, Caterina built up a public persona as a faithful widow and mother. More importantly, though, she was also recognized for her bravery and strength, which were qualities only attributed to men at the time. She became renowned as a warrior and for the next decade often appeared in armor to defend her territories. Just like Caterina, Catherine de' Medici, born in 1519 in Florence, received an excellent education. When she was only 14 years old, her uncle, the Pope, arranged for her to marry the King of France's second son, Henry. In 1547, he was crowned King Henry II, making Catherine the Queen of France. The beginning of her adult life was continuously difficult. She struggled to bring about an heir for about 10 years and was endlessly faced by her husband's mistress, Diane de Poitiers. Eventually, she was able to have 10 children, which included 3 sons. In 1559, Henry was killed by a jousting injury, and Catherine was pushed into a position of power. Her firstborn son crowned Francis II alongside his wife Mary, Queen of Scots. Francis tragically died a year later, and in 1560, Catherine became regent for her 10-year-old second son, Charles IX. Taking an important role in politics, she was the virtual ruler throughout Charles's reign. Among some of her other important rulings, she tried to make peace between the French Protestant Huguenots and the Catholics. In 1574, Charles died, and in Catherine's third and not-so-secret favorite son was crowned Henry III. Up until her death in 1589, she played a significant role in Henry's government and continued to work towards bringing an end to the Civil War. These three women, and many more who have unfortunately gone unnoticed and forgotten in our history's retellings, have had such an impact on our history. They were brave and fair and proved to most that women have just a right to be in positions of power as men do. Their hard work and courageous acts of freedom brought on a new era, one where women are not only seen as wives and homemakers, but as equals. It is unfortunate that their roles happen mostly behind the scenes, as it has given way to commenters and historians doubting their hard work's existence and the extent of their role in the Renaissance altogether. Nonetheless, they are an inspiration to women everywhere, both then and now. Around this time, Giovanni Boccaccio's The Decameron was being read all over. His stories of women gaining freedom and stepping up to face challenges was met with both uncomfort and intrigue. They started asking more questions, and you could say it lit a spark in them to want to fight for a better tomorrow. The book showed a new wave of female liberation and the gaining of freedom during the Italian Renaissance that had not been publicly discussed yet. In the 9th novella, On the Second Day, Boccaccio tells the story of an innocent woman who is about to be slaughtered for her husband's mistakes. She sneakily escapes by dressing up as a man and then lures her husband back to her. He is punished, and she gets to go home with new riches. This story, while seemingly simple, is actually very extremely important to the movement. Zenirva was seen as a victor. She found out about her husband's wager and used her wits and creativity to escape certain death. She makes it on her own as a servant and plans a sly way to get her revenge. This story just goes to prove that when faced with danger and put through rough times, women will continue to come out on top. We are not weak creatures, and we will do whatever we have to do in order to survive. Women were finally starting to use their power for personal gains. Another one of Boccaccio's stories that had an impact on women's ideologies was the second novella, On the Fifth Day. This story revolves around two lovers from different social classes, Costanza, who was rich and beautiful, and Martuccio, who was skilled yet poor. Martuccio asks for her hand in marriage, but is declined due to his social status. This does not deter Martuccio, though, and he decides to flee the island to make more money. A long time passes, and Costanza believes he is dead. This causes her to cast herself onto an oarless raft in the ocean, hoping to die. She lands on a different island where Martuccio also landed, and they find each other again and get married. Not only does this story highlight Costanza's devotion and mental strength, but also her vigor and determination. She did not care about his status, but only about being with him. She showed Renaissance women that it is okay to go for what you want and to stop at nothing until you achieve it. As you can see, the stories in Giovanni Boccaccio's The Decameron were an inspiration to women during the era. They provided hope, encouragement, and guidance, along with the role models I talked about previously. The Italian Renaissance truly was a turning point in the start of female liberation. Thank you for watching, and I hope you learned a thing or two.